Before we begin, thank you very much to Starscream's Ghost in the Machine. It's a very clever name. I see what you did there, for joining the Patreon campaign. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the support you guys give. When I say it keeps the channel going and keeps the daily content coming, I am not lying. I am not exaggerating. You're the reason I can still do this, so thank you. All right. We're at the end of the month, which means the monthly Q&A video is going to be posted later this week. If you've got something you want to ask me, just about anything you want to ask me, as long as it isn't inflammatory or as long as it isn't violating my rules on here in the channel, which is basically YouTube's rules, yeah, leave it in the comments of the last Q&A video I did, which was on the 2nd of the month. So scroll back in my channel, you'll find it. Or I might link it in the description if I can dig it up myself. But still, if you want to ask me anything for it, leave it there. It's your last opportunity for the month. So, let's talk gimmicks today. I have not done a tier ranking video in a long time. So, let's go ahead and get back into that. And this is one that I've been stewing over for a while. Like, why didn't I do this before? Why haven't I done this already? We're going to be talking, we are going to be talking gimmicks from Generation 1. Now, there are a few caveats to this, just so we're clear on what I'm including as a gimmick. For starters, if it is something common to toys at the time, like firing missiles, not a gimmick. Not a gimmick we're going to include in this line. That's a comparable. Being really big, like the City Formers. Yes, that's a particular feature, but is not essentially a gimmick. You're just a really big thing that's still just turning into something. Variations on gimmicks. So, like, we're not going to do an individual list for every iteration of Pretender. You know, because that alone would add like 5 or 6 to this list. Things like horror cons. You're a triple changer and a headmaster in one. You're awesome, but, you know, you're just 2 gimmicks mashed together. Things like that. So we're going to focus on the things that are specifically a gimmick. And we're going to be starting with the 6-shot, which would also encompass the quick switch in G1, which is a 6-changer. Yeah, multiple modes is not necessarily a gimmick. Triple changing is the thing, but the idea of going this far, yeah, that is a particular gimmick in and of itself. The original 6-shot toy was pretty incredible for the time. Granted, you had to use your imagination for some of the modes, but they did a really good job for creating what was essentially a fairly simple figure that just happened to be malleable enough to turn into a ton of different things. So that is actually a really impressive piece for the time. I think just on sheer play value and creativity that it takes to create that, I mean, I think it has to go straight to Holy Grail right at the start. It's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic idea to give you so many things that one Transformer can do. Quick Switch didn't pull it off as smoothly, but he was also a much smaller figure, so we give that a pass. And yeah, it's still a fantastic idea to be able to do so many different things. Excuse me as I hydrate because I've been talking a lot today. All right, the Double Spy gimmick. Only one toy that is the Double Spy, and that is Punch Counter Punch. The idea that is one vehicle with 2 distinct robot modes, an Autobot and a Decepticon. This is actually a really interesting idea, and I'm shocked that they haven't done it more often. I'm shocked that they have not revisited this character, because it's such a unique idea and concept. The 2 robot modes do suffer a little bit to hide the other, and the vehicle mode, in order to pull this off, does come across a little bit plain, but for the time, yeah, like, this was actually a pretty inspired idea. I don't think it's, like, super thrilling as a toy, but I do think it is incredibly unique. I do think it, like, gives you a really cool character, and a lot to do with a single basic figure. So, yeah, the Double Spy gimmick, very high on my opinions here. Oh, and then we go right into triple changing. I mean, this was a staple, right? We kind of agree that, like, any Transformer that turns into more than one thing, as we've already seen, is already inherently really, really cool. The advantage to just being a triple changer over a 6-changer is that you get to be far more specific things in your individual vehicle modes. They're allowed to be a lot more distinct from each other. Astro Train has 2 incredibly distinct vehicle modes. Blitzwing has 2 incredibly distinct vehicle modes, where the color schemes aren't even the same in those forms. Where that is a disadvantage that Six Shot has, and Quick Switch by extension. They have to be the same colors because the way their gimmicks work is by being kind of generic and kind of simple in where everything goes. So I am actually going to put standard triple changing 1 notch above 6 changing, just because I feel like it's still really super cool, and the fact that all 3 modes can be so distinct from each other instead of just kind of looking like Six Shot like Six Shot with his knees bent face down on the ground. That's the car mode, right? So I'm gonna give it a little bit more credit. Throttle Bot. So yeah, this is very simple. It's a pullback motor. It's a transforming pullback car. The Throttle Bots as a gimmick itself, it's pretty simple. It's pretty standard for toys back in the day. The idea that a transformer could do it was definitely the appeal here. Throttle Bots do drop down because for some reason they were kept incredibly simple for the sake of the pullback motor, and all of them have the exact same transformation and overall shape and style to them. I understand they're replacements for mini-bots. They're not supposed to be complicated, but at the same time, could have done a little bit more with the idea. I mean, it's just a pullback motor. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard. So I'm going to bargain bin that one. It's not the most impressive gimmick. It's cool as a toy car, and it's cool to have your little Transformer race forward, but I think it's sacrificed way too much in order to make that gimmick happen. Alright, motorized. We had, if I remember right, 3 motorized toys in G1. Skylink, Stripticon, and the one that we focus on here, Omega Supreme. Basically, this goes down to they can walk. So, as a feature that a big toy can do, that's actually super impressive to see, a toy walking on its own across your table. It's not the most impressive of walk cycles. It is very slow, very lumbering. A lot of times the feet just kind of slipped on the table, so it didn't really make a whole lot of forward progress. And it's the kind of thing that will wear out and eventually just not work anymore. If you have an Omega Supreme with a working walking gimmick, you've got a pretty rare piece. That is a motor that is easy to burn out. I will put it up at retail. Motorized is expensive for the time and limited to the larger figures. It's cool to watch a toy move, but it does come with some inherent flaws. And I don't just mean like the cost of posability because it's G1, but just the durability is the more concern. And the fact that overall, like, it really just doesn't look that impressive when it's walking. All right, Power Dasher. No, Battle Charger. Sorry about that. Battle Charger. I mean, very similar to a Throttle Bot, except it flips forward to transform automatically. In that way, it's very similar to the Jump Starters, except it stays on the ground. I am going to put it a little bit higher. So it's got the pullback gimmick, but it also has an auto transform gimmick at the same time. So even though it's essentially the same figure, you have that one little extra notch, which is, I think, something that, the Throttle Bots could have really used. It just feels like they're better Throttle Bots. That's basically what it boils down to. Trigger Cons. This was pretty simple. Very simple figures with giant weapons that flipped out. There's nothing too, like, as a gimmick, it is low tier. It is admittedly low tier. Yeah, it's just, it's a pretty simple, essential gimmick. No real reason to explain it farther than that. Not the most exciting thing. Headmasters. Now we're talking like very Transformer specific gimmickry. I love Headmasters. I mean, I love the idea that, like, aside from the fact that the head coming off and transforming into its own little robot, that's already interesting. It actually let them do a little bit more with, like, the simplified transformations from that era, because you don't have to hide the head in any way. You just take it off and set it aside. I'm sure designers loved creating Headmasters. But the idea that it could form a pilot for the vehicles was really cool. The idea that the heads were interchangeable and would change the stats on the chest was really cool. That's actually a really fun idea. It's a lot more fun in Japan, where you could buy additional heads in order to create, either even more variations on that. But for what this is, like, it's an incredibly solid idea. It's Transformers' first, like, line-wide gimmick. It's a fantastic idea. I mean, premium price with the potential to move up once we see the whole thing. All right, Sparkabots. Okay, so again, we are talking about a very late 80s, early 90s style toy gimmick applied to a Transformer, and that is Cold Sparks. So Cold Sparks kind of ended when they started making a big deal over, I think it was a Barbie rollerblade doll that actually set something on fire with its spark gimmick. Okay, so that kind of put all that to an end. Now, for the most part, the Cold Spark gimmick is entirely safe. It is incredibly specific situations where it would actually cause any kind of fire to erupt. The sparks are like just little shows of light, essentially. You can put your hand in front of them and it doesn't hurt in the least. But it's a cool gimmick out of a Transformer, because it's like they always put it to the fire cons, which could breathe flame, so it came across like as a cool little function. Simple, yes, but like I actually really love like the Cold Spark gimmick, so I'm gonna be a little bit nicer to it. Target Masters. Okay, similar concept to the Headmaster, except instead of transforming from something essential, it transforms into just a gun. So now, number one, this does mean that if you lose the Target Master, you're not out a Transformer. You just have a Transformer with no weapon. So there's a little bit of an improvement over a Headmaster. If you lose the head, you're done. Your Transformer's done. On the other hand, it doesn't integrate nearly as well as a Headmaster does, and that's always been a sticking point for me. If Target Masters did something a little bit more interesting when they were combined with the vehicle mode, like full integration, not just a peg plugging into a socket, that would be cool. If it added some extra like gimmick functionality to the vehicle outside of just mounting a gun, that would be cool. But beyond that, it really does just seem like a little bit bland. It's just a transforming gun, and everything else is kind of the same. So I'm going to put it high-end retail, because it's still a fun little idea, but it really could have been integrated better, I feel like. All right, Reflector is an interesting one to talk about. So it is 3 bots becoming one alternate mode, which is something that nothing else in Generation 1 does. So technically, yes, it is a unique standout gimmick. I mean, it is hurt by this is where things get really hurt. You break or lose one figure, you're out the entire Transformer. You've got 2 individual robots left, but there's no way they can combine. There's no, you can't form an actual camera out of them anymore. If it's the middle one that breaks, you're completely done. It's a cool idea to have multiple things transform out of one, but in practice, it's kind of impractical, because you'd rather just the individual robot be able to do things on their own, It's one reason why I like the modern Reflector. Yes, it's a cheap little, looks like nothing vehicle mode, but it is a vehicle mode. It can do something. So I'm going to put him low retail release, because it's still a neat trick, but there's some very inherent flaws to the actual function of the toy. Action Masters. So when Transformers people decided, what's keeping us back? Being able to transform. So the idea was to ape G.I. Joe in size and engineering style to create a more articulated Transformer action figure with an accessory that transformed. The accessories were generally very large weapons that your Action Masters could not hold up on their own unless the joints were super, super tight. And some of the times they didn't even match the character that they went with. It's just kind of like an odd disconnect. And then the fact that they were supposed to be aping G.I. Joe, and they completely failed to do that because Action Masters didn't have much improved articulation over G1 characters. Like, okay, the hips were great because they used the same O-ring hips as G.I. Joe, but they didn't improve the arm articulation at all. Most older G1 toys had knees, so the knees were not special. They just, for what it was, like, if they went full articulation like a G.I. Joe figure, I think this would have done a lot better, especially bringing back all the old characters. But as it stands, they dropped the ball. The Action Masters are just never going to be any good. All right, Pretenders is another contentious one. So we're going to encompass every version of Pretenders here. Vehicle Pretenders, Beast Pretenders, Mega Pretenders, Ultra Pretenders. Anything that was a shell that hid a full Transformer inside. So we acknowledge that the internal robots of these were never that good. They're either super basic like Bludgeon, and thus they kind of look like just simple like low rent Transformers from back in the day. But the larger Pretenders always had these little junky robots that were super thin and didn't look like much once they transformed. And then you had the shell itself, which, okay, if you got one of the Autobots, yeah, you're pretending to be a space marine or something. I don't know what you're pretending to be if you're a Decepticon. I don't think you're gonna hide as anything when you're a giant bat person. It's a novel idea. I feel like if they had gone full out with the Pretender idea from the beginning, then they were remembered much more positively than they are now. And by that I mean they should have done Mega Pretenders from the start, a transformation element to the shell, even if it's simple, even if it's very basic. But Mega Pretenders are a lot more fun and a lot more involved than just the standard Pretender, which is the majority of the line. I'm going to bargain bin it. I mean, there is some merit to the idea of Pretenders. It's 2 action figure toys in one, but neither one of them is great at what they do. So how much higher could I really put it? Micromasters. Now, upscaling size, no. Just a big robot that turns into a city, I'm not going to qualify that as a gimmick. But turning an entire line into micro size and having like full vehicles that will fit in your palm, okay, yeah, that's a fair gimmick. Of course, this was aping Micro Machines, which were immensely popular back in the day. And that was kind of like the start of like a micro toy line, like a micro toy boom of that era, where you had things like Littlest Pet Shop, Polly Pocket, Mighty Max. Everyone had this idea of creating super tiny toys that were super affordable to make, but also easy for kids to like pick up and carry around with them, and that kind of thing. Micromasters were not a bad idea. They do start coming off very similar to each other because they are very basic engineering, but having hordes and hordes of them was actually kind of cool. And yeah, they were super affordable for kids at the time, which, it's the reason why of all these late G1 gimmicks, it's the one that survived the longest. And it had the most support with, like things like transforming bases and the combiner ones. Like, these are neat ideas. They could have been, they should have been doing a lot more of. I'm going to put it, let's say, it's somewhere in the retail. It's somewhere high retail. I think it's better than motorized. At least it's presents more opportunities than motorized. All right. Duocons. Again, only two examples. Flywheels and oh man, my brain just fried. Whatever. Someone's gonna accost me in the comment section for forgetting the name. But yeah, Duocons are auto changers from back in the day. 2 vehicles, you plug one on top of the other, and they flip into the robot mode, which functionally is pretty cool, right? Yeah. So, but toy wise, the robot mode was terrible. The robot mode really was terrible. Now we have to be fair. I have to be fair about this. Yes. Battle Trap, by the way. Battle Trap. By the way, so I have to be fair here. I mean, looking back on it, it's just a gimmicky figure of the day, right? So I can't judge it too harshly. I can't compare it to like a full, articulated Transformer. for what it did, I'm willing to put it like there because it is a more advanced automorpher. Again, it makes the robot mode suffer, but at the very least, it's far more unique than things like Battle Chargers were. At least it's doing something different, right? Combiner, I don't think there's any debate. Combiner has to be like super high on the list. Aside from just from a marketing standpoint, it forced you to buy 5 or 6 figures all at once just to make sure you had the full thing going. But also, it's just super cool to transform these things individually and then transform them into some gigantic robot. That was like the best thing ever. It's Voltron with an added layer to it. No debate. No debate. Don't even have to go over it. Holy grail. Absolute top. Clones. Another unique idea from like the mid G1 run, which is full of weird ideas. So, it's an interesting concept. 2 Transformers that look identical in robot mode, but transform into 2 very different things. It's a novel concept. I definitely think the Beast ones for the Decepticons went way better. The Autobot ones took a little bit of imagination to see the vehicle in them. It's okay though. Like I mean, it's still like mid retail release. It's a neat novel idea, but nothing terribly impressive. I feel like if they had done more in that style, I'd be way more positive on it, so we'd have more examples, especially if there were better Autobot examples. But as it stands, yeah, it's kind of mid-tier. Here's something that was really rare back in the day for Transformers, and that was electronics. Again, kind of common for the day, but amongst Transformers, it was pretty rare. Shockwave, Galvatron. If we're talking like lights and sound gimmicks, that's pretty much all you got until G2 expanded it with extra sound packs for everybody. Again, it's kind of a mid-tier because it is kind of a basic gimmick. I probably shouldn't have included on this list, but it is something that features prominently in some pretty major Transformers. So I'm putting it in, and I'm gonna say, yeah, like it was actually really cool when a figure could light up or, God forbid, have sound or vocal effects. In G1, the only one that would have had it was Unicron. Of course, that got scrapped. All right. Optimus Prime is in here to represent play sets. Now, this is where I will count Citybots as a gimmick. The idea that you transform into something or have a component that transforms into something smaller Transformers could run around on. That's actually a really cool feature. With the G1, Optimus Prime was the original one that could do it with his Battle Station mode. That was great. And then Power Master Prime did it again. There's a few. They tried to do it with things like the Combiner leaders. They were never great. But yeah, it was really the Citybots where this shined. I do think it's really cool. I do think it's a really cool idea to be able to have play sets are such a big thing for 80s and 90s toys. Not nearly as much as it is today. So the idea that you had play sets that turned into other things, that was actually really cool. The Soundwave and Blaster. So the cassette gimmick, the idea of storing one transformer inside of another transformer, and if you think about it, if you really think about it, this is better Pretenders. This is basically Pretenders perfected. Is there any question? Yeah, Soundwave and Blaster are 2 of the best toys you have in G1. It was such a fun gimmick to hide your extra figures in there and be able to slot them out and transform them. That was so cool. And it's one of those gimmicks where just the more you had, the more you got to play around. So yeah. Soundwave, yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Jump starters. Where did I put Battlemaster? Okay, yeah, Battle Chargers are way back at the low end of retail release. This is the exact same gimmick, except they jump. And beyond that, it just comes down to how you treat the aesthetic of the toy. Do you want a realistic vehicle? Okay, that's a Battle Charger. You want a futuristic vehicle? That's a Jump Starter. I like futuristic vehicles. I mean, I know he looks like next to nothing, him, Top Spin and Twin Twist, when they're in vehicle mode. I don't care. I still really like the look of the 2. I still really like the function of the 2. It's not the most thrilling of toys, but hey, I think it is a little bit better than the Jump Starter or the Battle Charger. Power Master. So this is the end of the big mid G1 gimmicks, and This is kind of a contentious one for me. On the one hand, I love the idea of a smaller figure transforming into an engine to power up a larger transformer. There's something very thematic about that works in very well with Transformers on the whole. What I do not like about it as much is the fact that if you lost him, then your toy couldn't transform anymore. Now, to be fair, most of the time you just had to press in where the engine block would normally go and you could transform it yourself. But for a lot of kids who didn't understand how toys worked, that would have been a big detriment. Like, your toy just literally did not function anymore because you lost a piece of it. That sucks. You know, that's really unfortunate. And also it's just like anything that prevents it from doing like what a transformer should normally do. I don't think anything should come in between you and transforming a figure at all. So when you have something like that gets in the way, that's an issue. That's a problem. So of all of these, yeah, I think it's around here somewhere. If they had done this to where it just activated a particular gimmick in the robot mode, like some kind of flip out wing or gun or something, I think it would have been much more appropriate. As it stands, it's just not that great. And we're going to end it off with super modes. Now, in G1, we had very few of these. The only ones that come to mind immediately would be Ultra Magnus and Power Master Optimus Prime. But that is inherently a gimmick, being able to combine with something in order to form a larger robot. That's an extra level. And yeah, that's a very cool gimmick. Goes very high on the list, somewhere up in the premium price point. Yeah, it was always great. I mean, Power Master Prime itself, to this day, is still a really fun toy because of things like that. So, yeah, easy premium price. All right, looking this over. I am willing to bump Target Masters up to low end of premium because it's giving the gun something to do. So it's still a nice layer of fun that doesn't interfere with the toy. That's a sticking point for me. I think I'm okay with the retail release. Pretenders, I want to be a little bit nicer too than that. I mean, I think it is a bad idea that was poorly executed, but I don't think I drop it to flea market. Yeah, we leave that exclusively to the Action Masters that really could have been doing more if they really were trying to ape G.I. Joe. So, that's the tier ranking. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below, as always, let me know in the comments below how wrong I am and that your favorite G1 gimmick absolutely deserved to be up in the Holy Grail tier. I expect no less of any of you. So, thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time.
We're gonna have to get your names for the books. You, player 1.
William Current.
Roll me a deception check.
I thought their name was Payne.
Roll a disadvantage.
Okay. Alright.
That was like the opposite of the help action there. You, Goblin.
First name D's.
Watch your tongue.